Hello everyone and welcome to This is America. Today's guest is Taube Senior Fellow and Director of the Linda and Tony Rubin Program on Arab Politics at the Washington Institute, David Schenker. But first, here are the top US news for the week. US President Donald Trump secured Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's backing for a wide-ranging Gaza peace plan on Monday, as the two leaders warned that Israel would finish the job against Hamas if the Palestinian militant group rejects the deal. President Donald Trump said US sanctions on Turkey's defense sector over its purchase of Russian missiles could be lifted almost immediately if his talks with President Erdogan go well. President Donald Trump's steep new tariffs on pharmaceuticals and other goods sparked backlash from allies, with the EU insisting its drug industry is shielded under a prior trade deal. It's his toughest trade move since last April's sweeping reciprocal tariffs. Donald Trump signed an executive order for a plan that hands control of TikTok's US arm to his allies, cutting Chinese ownership to 20%. The U.S. Justice Department has ordered prosecutors in 6 states to investigate George Soros' Open Society foundations over alleged racketeering, fraud, and even terror links. Prosecutors are preparing potential RICO cases, the same law once used against the mafia. And that's your U.S. recap for the week. What does the U.S. 21-point plan for Gaza include? At the UN General Assembly, the United States unveiled a 21-point plan aimed at ending the war in Gaza. The proposal was shared with several Arab and Muslim countries, including Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Qatar, Egypt, Jordan, Turkey, Indonesia, and Pakistan. Their key condition: no occupation and no annexation of Gaza or the West Bank. Under the plan, Gaza would become a de-radicalized, terror-free zone focused on redevelopment. If both Israel and Hamas agree, hostilities would stop immediately. Israeli forces would begin withdrawing and hostages would be released within 48 hours. In return, Israel would free Palestinian prisoners and return bodies. Humanitarian aid would resume under neutral international oversight, and Gaza would be managed temporarily by a committee of Palestinian technocrats, supported by an international body led by the US and regional partners. Security would be overseen by a stabilization force, while Hamas would dismantle its military infrastructure. The plan also outlines economic recovery, de-radicalization programs, and eventually a possible path toward Palestinian statehood. It's with great pleasure that I welcome my guest, Taube Senior Fellow and Director of the Linda and Tony Rubin Program on Arab Politics at the Washington Institute, David Schenker. Mr. Schenker, thank you for being with us. Let's jump right in. How do you enforce the disarming of Hezbollah without sparking a civil war or an open confrontation with the LAF?
Well, that's the big question, right? Certainly to date, Hezbollah has largely cooperated or collaborated with the LAF in the south, but say they won't do so in the north. You want to avoid a clash at all costs, and at the same time, there's going to be, I think, necessarily differences going forward. Try and minimize them, but I don't think you can avoid them completely. If Hezbollah is going to dig in, are they going to open fire on their fellow countrymen, on the Lebanese armed forces? At a certain point, this becomes a matter of state sovereignty, and the government is going to have to decide. I think they do it in a phased manner, trying to minimize these the points of tension to the best of their ability, but I don't think it can be totally avoided. If Hezbollah is going to say that they refuse to be part of the Lebanese state, if they continue to say that they will be separate and above, in fact, the Lebanese state, that doesn't work either any longer. And so, I don't think it can be avoided. I think the government needs to make great efforts, but unless Hezbollah is willing to back down, it's not going to be sufficient for them to reach out to Saudi Arabia and hope that they protect them. This is really a matter of the state versus an armed gang.
But it seems that they're not ready to back down because, Naim Qasim said that he rejected disarmament, and he said that Hezbollah will fight this battle as Shias did in Karbala. So is it for you an empty threat, or does he still have the means to do so?
Yeah, I mean, the drawing a comparison to Karbala, I don't think it ended particularly well for those in Karbala, but the Lebanese Armed Forces has 75,000 men and women under arms. Hezbollah maybe 15,000. Nobody wants to see this kind of clash, but if Hezbollah is going to say that they will continue in the service of Iran, to put their allegiance to Iran above the state of Lebanon, but then I think necessarily there will be some sort of confrontation. And it is up to Hezbollah to say that they're going to be Lebanese, that they are holding back Lebanon at this point. They're holding back for their constituents, the rebuilding of South Lebanon. They're holding back funding for the rebuilding of Lebanon. And this is damaging the prospects for the entire state. They want to be on a sinking ship. That's fine, but I don't believe they have the right to drag the entire country down with them. This is finished. This resistance narrative. You can be a country, or you can be a failed state, and as well as choosing a failed state. I don't think the Beirut has to acquiesce.
Okay, so with everything that you just described, with the current situation on the ground in Lebanon, would you say that peace with Israel is possible?
I mean, ultimately, yeah. Syria ultimately will recognize sovereignty over the Shebaa farms, and then you'll have 12 points to determine the boundaries on that are a matter of 100 meters here, 100 meters there. I think you can delineate a land border. And then what are the issues of dispute after that? Of course, after the disarmament of Hezbollah and the end of Israeli occupation of these 5 points in the south, continuous violations of airspace that have been provoked by Hezbollah's attack on Israel. I think that while peace may be a distant prospect, I think more normal relations between the two states is entirely possible. I think the vast majority of Lebanese maybe don't like Israel very much, but really don't want to be in a constant state of war that Hezbollah every 6 or 12 years drags Lebanon into $6 or $11 billion worth of damage in the entire state. I think this is a country with enormous potential that is not being realized because they have been wedded because of Hezbollah to this Iranian-controlled destabilization project.
Okay, so what about then peace in Gaza? So you've seen Trump's 21-point plan to put an end to the war in Gaza. Would you think that Hamas will agree on the proposed terms?
I don't. I think I think they'll come back and they'll say, yes, but we have some modifications, and perhaps Witkoff, the company, will engage in the discussion about what type of modifications they'd like. But at the end of the day, the key point here, in addition to Israeli withdrawal, Arab deployments, is that, and of course, the return of hostages and prisoners being returned from Israeli jails. The key point here is that Hamas is defeated. That they have to admit that they are defeated. They lay down their weapons and either leave or and get amnesty or engage in a Palestinian state building process. And if they don't want to do that, then this war sadly will continue. It's been a horrific 2 years that Hamas wrought on Gaza. And this is, a Hail Mary pass. It's going to be very difficult, a lot of moving parts. But you have basically key Arab states and key Islamic states, Pakistan and Asia, Turkey, others, all backing this proposal because they want to see an end to the war. And they know that this war is not going to end with Hamas retaining weapons and control over that territory. So, I think that it's a long shot that they will accept it. They are, in addition to being ideological, they are nihilistic. And the more Palestinians that die, I think the better they believe it is for their cause. But I don't think it's serving anybody at this point. I think the war probably, reached its point of maximum utility about a year ago, and it's gone on far too long.
Okay, I have one last question for you. Iran's influence is declining in the Middle East. What's the U.S. doing to cement that shift?
Well, I think Trump himself is trying to enlarge the Abraham Accords. I think after 2 years of war in Gaza, it's going to take a long time for both Arab countries and the residents in the region to be open to that possibility. And you saw even Trump mention that he'd like Iran to join the peace process as well. But I think there's a lot more work to be done here. A lot of that is trying to deny the supply chains to Iran's proxies. Lebanon, in a sense, is fortunate. They've got the al-Shara on their border, who no longer is a member of the axis of resistance of Iran in the region, and is not allowing Syria to be used any longer as a transit point for Iranian weapons and Hezbollah. More has to be done to be in Houthis, and we have consolidations of Iran's degradation that have to be, I think, solidified, mostly in terms of elections in both Iraq and in Lebanon. You want elections in Lebanon to reflect the new reality on the ground, which is a government in a country that wants to do, or a state says they want to do economic reforms, that they want to be part of the wider world, and they want to exert state sovereignty and not any longer be used as a battleground for Iran's proxy wars against Israel. So I think the Trump administration has to focus on some of these, sort of political goals in these countries to try and encourage, beneficial results, not for the United States, but for the people of these countries.
David Schenker, thank you so much for being my guest on This is America, and thank you for sharing those insights. Coming up next,
it's my pleasure, Tylia.
Thank you. Coming up next, we take a closer look at the Trump-Netanyahu meeting in the White House. Here's a report by Hala Abdallah.
U.S. President Donald Trump and Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu announced on Monday a wide-ranging peace plan for Gaza.
I support your plan to end the war in Gaza, which achieves our war aims.
The 21-point proposal calls for a ceasefire, the release of hostages, disarmament of Hamas, and Israel's gradual withdrawal from the territory.
Working with the new transitional authority in Gaza, all parties will agree on a timeline for Israeli forces to withdraw in phases.
Speaking in Washington, Trump declared that peace in the Middle East was beyond very close, calling the day potentially one of the greatest in civilization. His plan also includes deploying a temporary international stabilization force and forming a transitional authority, one he said would be heading himself. The deal would exclude Hamas from future governance but grant amnesty to those willing to accept peaceful coexistence. Netanyahu, however, cast doubt on whether the Palestinian Authority, which governs the occupied West Bank, should play a role in Gaza. Trump stressed that if Hamas refuses the deal, Israel would have his full backing to proceed militarily. Reaction from abroad was swift. Egypt, Qatar, and other Arab and Muslim states welcomed the announcement, while European allies including Britain, France, Germany, and Italy voiced strong support. The European Union urged all parties to seize the moment for peace. The Palestinian Authority praised Trump's determined efforts, but Hamas has yet to respond to Trump's proposal, leaving the future of the plan and of the war uncertain.
And that's it for today's episode. The replay is available on all This is Beirut's platforms. Thank you all for watching and see you next Wednesday.